Okay. Thank you again, President and members of the governing board, for having us here this evening. Our intent is to provide you with a status update of where the committee is at this point. We are getting closer and closer to the new school year, and it is our hopes that we have everything in place because teachers will be evaluated in the coming school year as per the Arizona revised statute. So this is to give you an update and just to remind you, statute 15203, which requires us to look at our current evaluation tool and ensure that 33 to 50% of our tool is based on student achievement and evaluation outcomes. I know you've seen these several slides before the last status update, but I really think it's important that you're aware of how many dedicated teachers and principals have given up a lot of time in order to work on this, and I'm very, very proud of the committee. The ones who are asterisks helped on the committee last year. Many of those people have helped on this committee for 2 years, and actually a little bit more than that. So I really would like you to reflect on those teachers and administrators who are part of this. Okay, so the statement of purpose for our evaluation advisory committee team for the principal and teacher team was set by the governing board, and I think it's really a very sound purpose to create a fair and equitable instruments that align with the state model and accelerate student achievement, and that's our intent to really do that. The committee worked on goal statements to look at improving student learning, use the process and the achievement data to drive professional development and enhance teaching, leadership, and student performance. So you'll notice a common theme throughout tonight's presentation is really focused on growth and professional development. To increase data-informed decision-making for students, teachers, and principal evaluations, and fostering a school culture where student learning and progress is a continual part of our improvement process. And it's all about improvement. We also looked at guiding principles for our work. It was very important that we include multiple measures and that we don't just use one measure, so that you'll see that reflected coming up. That we communicate clearly defined expectations, but yet we offer some flexibility while we are building this. And I love the analogy that our external peer evaluator used. We're really renting the apartment right now while we're building the house, because this should be seen as a work in progress. Right at this point, we have at the best that we have at this time, but once the technology catches up with the district and the state starts aligning their things, I think we're going to have a much better place to live. But I think at this time we have the very best possible thing. So we're also gathering information to provide teachers with guidance on areas of strengths and shortcomings, and looking at different types of assistance and professional development for teachers and leaders in that area. So as a review, here are some of the broad tasks with many, many subtasks underneath that the committee engaged in. Went to all the sites to get input from teachers and principals, looked extensively at best practices and article reviews, went to all the state task meetings, and came back to our committee meetings and re-informed the committee on what we're doing there to help guide their work. Looked at designing rubrics for measuring student academic progress, and really Dr. Spiller took the lead on that and came up with some really exciting things. Looking at piloting measures for data verification, and that's in progress right now. Obtaining feedback on these measures, and then getting an external evaluation on these so that we can feel very good about what we put in. So the current status is right now.
Dr. Lugo, we go back just one slide, please.
Mhm.
The external peer evaluation. Will you tell us a little more about that?
Sure, can I forward one slide?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's because I can't pronounce her name. So right now the information has been given to Dr. Ilse
Lasliker. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, to her. And she has taken the data analysis that Dr. Spiller has put together, both on the product and the process, and replicated the methodologies of Dr. Spiller's work and looking for verifying that information. We're awaiting the report from her. We had an informal conversation at this time. So she looked at the whole piece and gave us, she has some preliminary recommendations for the committee, and I think there's about 8 of them. So we're also looking at further exploring the use of our ATI system. They're starting to, that's when we say the technology's catching up with the law. They're starting to look at teacher evaluation systems as well, which might be under consideration for years to come. Cabinet reviewing and the superintendent reviewing on the principal side, and then coming up with final revisions and bringing those to you for governing board action. More questions about that? Oh, my slide didn't come out as pretty as I thought. The committee requested I do a double bubble map to help you see the similarities and differences between the past tool and this year's current tool and the present. I jokingly put in the past picture. That's my mom's 8th grade graduating class in Germany. So if you can see the middle there are the similarities. So our SES process tool, what we observe teacher behaviors with, has changed very little, although we will be looking at further increasing our inter-rater reliability. The focus on professional development is still on both of them. Both tools still have classroom observations, both formal and informal, and they're both standards-based and aligned to Danielson's work as well. So now if you look at the differences, in the past or this year, we really focus, our current standard evaluation system focuses on teacher behavior. And now, moving into the next school year, we'll focus on teacher behavior as well as student growth. The SES Level 2 currently is a plan that teachers who qualify for SES Level 2, they put a plan together, submit it to their principal, monitor the progress of that plan. For next year going into Level 2, we're looking at, if the teacher chooses to, having that based on observations that are unannounced. So the summative will be based on unannounced observations should the teacher choose that. The plan, we had to move that off of SES Level 2 due to our Group B teachers. Plan would look very similar and then it would be very redundant. And then currently we don't group our teachers into Group A and Group B groups, but we will need to because of student achievement data.
So the distinction with Group A and Group B isn't a characteristic of the teacher, but rather the availability of valid and reliable student achievement data.
I love the way you get us right into the next slide that we have. So I'm going to forward to that where you were asked, and then I'll come back to this. So you're absolutely right that Group A teachers, and we call them awesome, and Group B teachers, we're going to call them brilliant. So there's no classification or leveling of these teachers. It's just the availability of the data. So currently We're looking at Group A teachers who have valid and reliable data available as our mainstream classes and our English language development classrooms in 2nd through the 6th grades. Also our middle school math teachers, language arts, and middle school reading teachers. So if you see on the group, that slide up there, I'm sorry, it looks prettier on my computer, on a Group A teachers, and the way the percentages have been broken out is at this time 55% will be done on the process or the teaching observations, 35% on individual classroom data, and 10% to promote collaboration for grade level or data that's available or department. Okay. Group B teachers, our brilliant teachers, are those without valid and reliable student achievement data at this time. Our hopes is through lots of hard work that Group B teachers will move into Group A. They are our middle school science and social studies teachers, kindergarten and 1st grade, due to the number of available assessments. All of our special area teachers, our special education teachers, and our teachers on assignment, our coaches and student achievement teachers and Title I facilitators. So the breakout is, and you'll see the alignment throughout this document. At this point where the committee is, the breakout is at, again, 55% on the teaching and observation, 10% on the site or department level to promote collaboration. Now and that's dependent on if you're a one teacher at that site, for example, the band teacher, that person doesn't really have a department level to go to, so that person would go to a site level data. So, and then the 35% of the plan where the Group A teachers had the student achievement data that was valid and reliable, Group B teachers will be asked to create a student achievement plan with their principal and with the help of directors that are content experts, and looking at setting rigorous goals, coming up with a plan of action, how to meet those goals, and then evaluating it, the progress on those goals continually for a final evaluation. That looks very much like our Career Ladder 2, our Career Ladder plan right now. So this won't be, for those teachers who are currently on the Career Ladder, this won't come as a big shock to them. So it helps, I think, with the transition of this, and those teachers that are similar, for example, I'll use band teachers again. We hope that all the band teachers come together and come up with a similar plan based on the needs of their students, and then moving towards on that.
So by similar, you mean it would be something across the district?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's our hopes, that we can get to that.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't we be able to do that?
If you have a special circumstances, for example, band teachers now will be asked to cover 3 campuses, and so if their student population is not similar to the band teacher next door, their plan may be different.
And that's subject to review by whom?
By the principals and the director leading that group. So right now, Dr. Spiller's been doing a lot of work on leading those groups with common formative assessments and working through that information.
Did you say that these recommendations do or do not include the external evaluation recommendations?
They are, Ildi, yes, she's taken all of this into account. Okay, so the principal evaluation recommendations at this time, our principal work is one step behind our teacher work. So you'll see similarities, yet they still need to undergo the review process and cabinet review. So what this looks like here is that the leadership, the rubric, I'm going to flip back so you can have a minute to process that. The process tool, where on the teacher evaluation system were the observations, and the rubric that we use aligned to the INTAS standards. The principal evaluation is aligned to the ISLIC standards for part of the rubric, and then the sustainability rubric as well. And we see that as 55% at this time for the process tool. The product tool would be the remaining 45% based on school and district level data, and it's an aggregate of the same data that teachers are being evaluated on, yet we're looking at reliable ways of indicating not only growth but actual attainment of cut scores. So we're in conversation of that right now.
Both.
Both. So that's what their pie looks like. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Spiller for the statistical pieces because she's much more able to articulate that.
Thank you, Dr. Lugo. So the charge is, what is a valid and reliable method for sorting teachers and principals into the 4 categories? And Dr. Lugo shared with you all the meetings that this committee has met. During the fall break in October, the committee met and we agreed on parameters for the calculations of student achievement. So nothing was designed before those meetings. And the parameters that they stated, I'm just listing 3 of them that really drove my methodology. What students are included in each teacher's evaluation, what assessments will be used, and what's the calculation going to look like? Is it going to be growth or is it going to be cut scores? So I worked with these parameters to develop a methodology to sort teachers by student performance. For me personally, I wanted this methodology to be understandable, replicable, flexible, and reflective over multiple years. So taking all these together, I based the methodology on something that's sort of simple, which is a normed curve distribution. So this slide is a slide that I use with the principals to explain the methodology for sorting teachers and principals. So I just thought I'd take you through a little bit of the script so that you could see what we were talking about. So suppose you are baking cookies. After mixing up the dough, you scoop up a bit with your fingers, roll it into a ball, and plop it on the cookie sheet. Repeat this 50 times and you've got an oven full of cookies. Repeat this 500 times and you've got a freezer full of cookies, or perhaps enough for a bake sale. Now suppose that you were being investigated by the homemade cookie police, and after you plop each cookie onto that sheet, they carefully lift it up and weigh it. For all 500 cookies, they record the weight. So every cookie is going to be measured. When they finish, they prepare a chart, presumably for their PowerPoint presentation back at headquarters. Most of the cookies will have a weight very close to the average, give or take a few tenths of a gram. Small numbers of cookies will be either very small or very large. The very small cookies might burn in the oven, and the very large cookies might be raw, but the vast majority of cookies would be delicious. Of course, that won't happen if your kids are helping. So you may have recognized the shape of the chart as a bell curve. You might know it as a norm distribution, or you might know it as a couple of other names that are used in statistics. It has many fascinating applications in mathematics and statistics, but perhaps the most fascinating is that if you consider any variable in a large population, the histogram or the chart of values tends to follow the bell curve. So this happens frequently in nature. We see it all the time. In the case of cookies, the weight is a variable because you aren't a robot when you make your cookies. Another example, not to belabor the point, though, is height. So height is another example that if you measured like all of the men in this room and you put them up in order of their heights, you would, and the number of people at each of that area, if you've got large enough numbers of men in the room, you'd probably still end up with a bell curve, and the same thing for women. So it's just that we can explain these variabilities that they fall within that normal distribution. And it can explain a lot of complex phenomena. So, using a bell curve, we can sort principals and teachers into groups based on the statistics of a bell curve. The bell curve is a count of the incidences or objects that meet a criteria. The sections are a calculation called standard deviation. Standard deviation is used to measure variability or diversity. How far are groups of teachers from the mean? We can describe these teachers in 4 different groups. We can have highly effective teachers, which will be significantly above typical growth. We'll have effective teachers that are within a small confidence interval around typical growth. We'll have partially effective teachers that are below typical growth. And then we have a group of teachers called ineffective teachers that are 2 or more years below typical growth, or 2 or more years of data that show that the teacher's classroom have scored below typical growth. I think I said that right.
I just have a note here, Dr. Spiller. On the bill moving through the legislature that addresses these evaluations, the one that we have been calling, or that's labeled here partially effective, would, if this bill is signed in to law, would be developing.
Okay.
And I think
Great.
the others are the same as you have.
No, we can adjust that, thanks. So this chart is, I've actually done this probably twice. I've done preliminary analysis of the results using all the calculations that we have come up with. And so what's interesting is you do see our normed curve, and you can see where we I put in the lines for the standard deviations. So the group of highly effective is 1 and 2 standard deviations above the typical growth of the district. The effective group is 1 standard deviation above and 1 standard deviation below the average of the district. And our partially effective and ineffective group is 1 standard deviation below the district. So I just wanted to show you what this might look like. It is accounts of teachers who earn points on the various assessments. So these are the steps that I go through. I calculate the mean or average, I calculate the 1 or 2 standard deviations, and we analyze what we see. So at this time, we see that there's 24% of our teachers would be highly effective, 53% would fall in the group of effective, 12% would be partially effective, or as you say, developing, and 9% would be ineffective.
Where are these percentages again? Are they on this PowerPoint?
I didn't put them on the PowerPoint, I just read them to you.
Okay. Would you read them again? I was looking for them and I didn't.
I apologize.
Okay.
Put back. And I just want to say the ones that I'm reading from are from ILDE's report, and they might not
Okay.
be equal to this graph because,
I trust your
in
data.
fact, I'm positive it's not. But anyway, highly effective is 24%, effective is 53%, partially effective is 12%, and ineffective is 9%. And that's preliminary data.
Okay.
So this is an example of a report that a teacher might receive during the fall conference. Oops, change my page. We have begun to develop the procedures and forms we will use for documentation for this new process. Preliminarily, we haven't worked this process out all the way. Principals and teachers will verify the students with full academic year for each Group A teacher. So they'll see the list of their students and they will agree that these students were a full academic year. The calculations will be run, and this is an example of what a teacher summative compositive report might look like. And in this report, what we're showing is all the assessments, what the cut scores are that were used in the calculations, and then what the result of the calculation would be for the teacher for each of these assessments. Then we sum up all the points possible, all the points that they earned divided by the points possible, and based on that percentage of points, they're placed in the groups based on, again, the norm distribution of all this, of the teachers in the district in their effective group.
Dr. Spiller?
Yes.
So I don't see, and I think we had a conversation about this, but the the CFAs. Like that doesn't, that's not a part of this at all. That's completely separate, is that correct?
During the October meeting and also an additional meeting, do you remember what, other meetings? Lots of meetings. The teachers determined that they did not want to include CFAs as part of the assessments to be used for this.
Good.
So that was the decision.
Okay, thank you.
We concurred. That's my section.
Here for any questions that you might have on the status report.
Yes. Dr. Lugo, back on slide 19 with the principal evaluations, school level data, would you talk about that again? Is that just math and reading, or are we somehow finding out the cumulative school level data because we're teaching all the other subjects as well?
At this time, we had just that conversation with the superintendent today on which areas we're going to include in that data. It's, at this point, the valid and reliable data that we have will include the Ames data. It looks like the label for, whether you're A school, B school, those, we had conversations about that, our Zella data. And that's kind of where we're at, because we want to make sure that it's an aggregate of the teacher data. We have not yet had the conversation if it's going to be the aggregate of the teacher data based on the student achievement plans for our Group B teachers. That's a conversation for another time. Currently, one thing though I would like to make the board aware of is our current evaluation system for our principals is in compliance with the mandates from the statute that we have, because more than 33% of our current evaluation system is based on student achievement data. We have quite a rigorous, so rather than rush through something, I'd rather go slow down to do it correctly, so that's why we're going in that route.
I think it's also worth noting that with new assessments being developed and implemented like PARC,
Right.
this is going to change, which I want the board to be aware of, but I think you said it well at the beginning, that this is a work in progress and this is the best apartment we can rent right now.
And I wish I could take credit for those words, but those are Ildy's words. It's the best apartment that we can rent while we're looking to build the house.
Mm-hmm. Any questions on that, Disney? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we get there though, the next item is business and plan presentation of the quarterly budget report.